Crash Course, the newest web show with your host, Leonardo DiCaprio.
Hello, I'm Leonardo DiCaprio, and today we're going to be speaking about the Dutch. They came here in 1609, and using the Northwest Passage, they came... Anyway, he went on to find the Northeast Passage. Is that right?
There's no such thing as the Northeast Passage.
In 2025, Leonardo...
Oh, cut! Leonardo, this is like...
I quit! I don't want it!
We interrupt this program to say that Leonardo DiCaprio has been fired due to knowing nothing about the Dutch. From this point on, our substitute, John Green, will be hosting the show.
Hi, I'm John Green.
And I'm John Blue, and this is Crash Course World History, and today we're going to talk about the Dutch colonization of the Americas.
We apologize for the change of set, as you may have noticed, but after Leonardo was fired, he consistently harassed us at the old studio, so we were forced to relocate.
So let's talk about the Dutch, John.
Okay, John.
In 1609, the Dutch began a search for a northeast passage to Asia. The Northeast India Company, located in Amsterdam, hired English sea captain explorer Henry Hudson for the job.
Hudson tried to sail around Scandinavia and Russia, but failed 2 times. He then set his sights on finding a northwest passage to Asia instead of returning home. When Hudson arrived off the coast of what is now Cape Cod, he sailed into the mouth of a large river, which was later named the Hudson after him.
The explorer sailed as far as his ship would go until he reached shallow shores, and claimed the entire Hudson River Valley for the Dutch East India Company. This area included present-day states, Delaware, New Jersey, and New York. Gotta love New York, huh?
That's right, John. In 1613, a treaty between the 5 nations of the Iroquois and the Dutch was made. The treaty was recorded on a wampum belt, which is an intricately decorated belt made of beads, as seen in this picture. This is incorrect. I apologize. This is, oh my god, I am so sorry. This is a good example of a wampum belt. This treaty was then named the Two-Row Wampum Treaty. It later came to symbolize a peaceful coexistence between the Iroquois and the Dutch. A year later, in 1614, due to Henry Hudson's good relationship with the natives, Fort Nassau was established, becoming the first of many trading stations to be built. It should also be known that most settlements in the Americas made by the Dutch were made for trading purposes instead of religious purposes. Like their English counterparts in Virginia, the Dutch did not like agriculture but instead took to the fur trade. John Rodriguez, a Dutch trader, spent the winter of 1613 and 1614 trapping fur pelts and trading with the natives. He was the first non-Native American to do so. After this, the Dutch always managed to maintain strong, peaceful trading agreements with the natives and the American colonies.
Thanks, John. I'm going to keep hope until then. In 1624, the Dutch East India Company once again crossed the Atlantic. To gain territory for a newly planned colony, Adrian Block became the first European to explore what is now Long Island and the mainland near it. He then claimed the land as New Netherland. Not long after, Peter Manwheat.
Actually, John, it's pronounced Minuit. It's French.
Peter Manwheat purchased Manhattan Island from the Indians and renamed it New Amsterdam, the capital of New Netherland.
This puppy was just too cute for me to let John keep. Anyways, sadly, in 1664, after the First Anglo-Dutch War, New Netherlands was taken by the British and renamed New York. At this time, many Dutch settlers were forced into being sold into slavery in the British colonies of Virginia. Too soon after, the Treaty of Breda was made in 1667 to end the Second Anglo-Dutch War. Thankfully, 6 years later, in 1673, the Dutch chartered a fleet of 21 brave ships to take back New Netherland. The capital was renamed New Orange after William of Orange, the Lord Lieutenant of Holland at the time.
Well, as soon as the Dutch came to the Americas, they were establishing trade networks. The first of these to be made was the Algonquin Indians who lived in the New Netherlands area. The Dutch completely depended on the natives to provide goods to be traded, namely pelts, just like people need air. The natives gladly delivered on behalf of their relations with Henry Hudson.
In exchange for the labor from the natives and the right to ownership of their land, the Dutch mistakenly thought that gifts in the form of manufactured goods would be proper consolation. This was probably due to the fact that the Dutch and the Indians had incredibly different concepts of ownership and land, which could not be explained to each other. because they could not understand a word of each other's languages for the most part, just like fire and ice. The Indians did not understand that the Dutch were taking ownership of the land. They simply thought that they were meant to share, so the Indians came back seasonally. This obviously eventually led to some violent conflict between the Dutch and the Indians.
The Dutch Parliament chartered the West India Company, to not be confused with East India Company, in 1624, which in turn sponsored 30 families to come to the New World and settle in the Dutch territory. The company then established many joint stock companies in South America. The 30 families established a settlement in modern-day Manhattan, which we know was called New Amsterdam at the time. When New Amsterdam was theirs, the Dutch built Fort Orange, which protected the settlers all along the Hudson River.
So what is a joint stock company, you ask, John? Yes, that's right, I heard you in the back there. Anyways, a joint stock company is a company that is owned by its shareholders. Basically, governments like that of the Netherlands would create joint stock companies to make sure that the company was completely owned and controlled by the government itself, which is why they were quite common in colonies in the Americas. So why have we been talking about this with such enthusiasm? Because if the Dutch American colonies had not existed, many of the ideals set in the American Constitution would be drastically different. The culture that characterizes the region of New York and northern New Jersey, i.e. civil liberties and pluralism, poof! Imagine they were never around in the first place.
So what is pluralism? Yes, this is me getting back at you for joint stock companies, John. Pluralism is the idea that politics and decision-making for the government should be left to the government, with non-governmental sources left to exert their own influences.
Hi, my name is Kiana Jeffs, not John Green as you may have thought, and I'm the executive producer.
Hi, I'm Victoria Tanjori, not John Blue, and I'm the producer.
This concludes our episode of Crash Course with John Green. Join us next week to learn about the Mongols.